By the 14th century, about 900 years after the fall of Rome, Europe was a holy mess of brutal feudalism, vicious infighting, and rampant disease. The plague was devastating Europe, ravaging millions. While the world was being ripped apart, a secret society was trying to put it back together from the only place it could, the underground. If you wanted to survive the bloody horror that was Europe after the fall of Rome, you needed protection. Strongholds, castles, city walls. You needed stone. Quarrying became an essential and powerful industry. Maastricht, a little town sitting on a wealth of limestone, became the heart of a big medieval business, supplying stone to the true superpower of the 13th century, the Church. As the only real unifying force in Europe, the Church had the power to brand anyone a heretic and condemn them to death and damnation. Even the rich and powerful holy warriors, the Knights Templar, were massacred in 1314, when their secretive rituals and vast fortune threatened to undermine the authority of the Pope. But in order to build their soaring cathedrals, the mighty Church was utterly dependent on a small, mysterious band of quarrymen, who may have preserved the Knights' secrets underground. I'm on my way to this massive underground lair that may hold clues to the hush-hush initiation rites of medieval quarrymen. I'm meeting with this guy named Jaco Silverton. He's one of the foremost experts on literally hundreds of quarries that are in this area. And he's taken me to the biggest and best of them, St. Petersburg Quarry. Jaco, how you doing? Nice to meet you.
You want to go into the caves?
I do, in fact.
So the original system, when you put all the passages behind each other, it would be about 300 kilometers.
Jeez.
So that's one of the biggest, in medieval times, would be one of the biggest human enterprises in the Western world.
So the cave entrance is in there?
Yeah, it's in the forest.
Ceastert Quarry. Yeah, you can feel the air just changed right here.
Don't do this at home.
Look at this. So we're not allowed to go into this place, but if we sneak in that hole over there, we can get in. This hidden lair contains clues preserved for 700 years that may link the quarrymen here to the Knights Templar.
Watch your head.
Awesome. It's just enormous. And this is just the beginning. In the 13th century, only a select few knew how to produce the limestone building blocks vital for constructing castles and cathedrals. The mines these quarrymen dug also became their secret headquarters, and the authorities suspected something more sinister than just stone cutting was going on, out of sight in the underground.
If you look up there,
Yeah.
that's the first level of extraction. So in medieval times, when they would open a quarry, they would start with a passage that was about 2 meters high, like a man could stand up, basically.
Right. Using picks, the quarrymen would dig out a narrow channel, just big enough for a man, about 6 feet into the rock. From the channel, they would use saws to cut out large, even blocks, working their way down. After years of digging and excavating, the original quarries measured a total of over 185 miles.
We know that the Egyptians used exactly the same techniques for digging stone out, building pyramids. And basically, after the Egyptians, this was the first time in history when in these amounts of stone and buildings were erected.
Why is that? So you're saying that people lost the knowledge after
Yeah, especially after the Romans left.
So these are very sophisticated techniques that they have that they learned from where?
Well, we suspect that they brought it home from the Crusades, and they probably brought back, especially the famous Templars, Knights Templar, who built these huge Crusader castles.
Could these man-made caverns house the long-lost legacy of the Knights Templar? We know the Knights came back from the Crusades in the 12th century with valuable knowledge collected from Muslim scholars and engineers, at a time when their own repressive church often viewed science as heresy. By the time many of these quarries were dug, the Templars had been rounded up and slaughtered, but their valuable trade secrets, like techniques for stone cutting and forbidden rites and rituals, may have survived, quietly passed on for generations. Here, 30 feet beneath the modern town, we found possible evidence that the quarrymen of Maastricht were descendants of the Templars.
The fact is, we find symbolism here used by the Knights Templar.
This is a Knights Templar temple.
Yeah, it's very hard to say. I really would like to believe it.
Because they were so secretive, the Templars' traditions are among the world's great ancient mysteries.
Just gotta bring some light over here.
But an extraordinary discovery by our crew revealed further evidence of Templar activities, hidden in the dark for centuries.
Yeah, right there. You see that?
Oh, wow. This is wild. We're doing lighting down here to get some shots for the show.
Yeah.
And this is very cool because this guy's seeing things down here that he's never seen before, because he's normally only here with a gas lamp. And he found some new marks. What did you find?
Oh, I found all kinds of things. We see all kinds of inscriptions we normally can't see because we don't have light enough.
Like what?
So we can see survey points. We can see pentagrams, which are mystical signs the quarryman would place for good luck.
Authorities above ground suspected these secretive men, living and working down in the devil's domain, were up to no good. But they needed the stone too much to actively interfere. Instead, local monks invaded their sanctuary and added their own graffiti, warnings against the behavior they thought was going on down here.
Here's another one. It's sodomy.
Where?
Here. It's very nice.
Oh yes, well that would be sodomy right there.
That's sodomy.
That would also be bestiality.
Obviously.
That's not good. That's a bad
It's a bad sin. There was somebody at the surface who wanted to tell the people underground to watch their loose morality.
The quarrymen left their own messages behind, self-portraits untouched for over 500 years.
So this is how the quarryman would have looked around 1470 AD. This is what they thought about him.
He was a jester.
A jester. And the jester, in medieval days, was the only one who could tell the king he was a fool.
I see. Suspicious of the authorities above, the quarrymen may well have created an entire parallel society down here, including the ultimate medieval heresy, forming their own breakaway religious sect and building their own church. And the evidence is all around us, in a giant chamber shaped like a cross.
I think the best way to compare it to is the Freemasons.
Okay.
Freemasons basically built on the knowledge of the Knights Templar.
And there are rites that you go through as you go on your way through the
Yeah, it's a way through life.
Mm-hmm.
You start off as an apprentice and you grow into your...
Expert status.
Yeah, you can imagine that in this cross-shaped hall, these people would gather to welcome a new member into their group.
If the quarrymen did worship here, without the church's blessing, they risked the same horrible fate as their ancestors, the Knights Templar. Think of the implications of this. I mean, I'm standing in what is by no coincidence a cross, okay? An enormous cross. Here's the long part, and this is the cross piece. There's nowhere else in the whole quarry system that it's like this. So they chose to be here. That makes this the altar, all right? So we're essentially in what is an underground cathedral. And look above us. All these elaborate symbols up there have to have been part of some kind of secret ceremony, a ritual, perhaps a rite of passage, an initiation into perhaps a cult. Think how dangerous that would be down here in the dark, a total violation of the powers that be above ground. This would have been heresy. For all of this, these guys were risking their lives.